So this panel is about investigating the harm to wild parrots and how it's connected to other harms. All these harms we're going to hear of, wow, they have common sources and they're interconnected. They're pervasive. They're hard to diminish. Doesn't matter whether the birds are captive or free flying or international, domestic. We are one flock. We are one world. And so we're going to begin with what the trade does to wild birds. And everything from economics to capitalism to drug trade to our interconnection to the way we relate to birds. So we have several people who work with wild parrots around the world, and there are 4 of us. And I'd like to begin. We're going to begin with Juan Cantu from Mexico. We're going to put the bios in so you can read more about them. He is a leader, not just in Mexico, but around the world, and understanding about the harm of the pet trade and making great strides to decrease this. He is vital. He is vital to this movement. So Juan Carlos, thank you for sharing your work with us, and good luck sticking to 10 minutes.
So my name is Juan Carlos Cantu. I'm the director of Teyeliz AC. This is an NGO in Mexico, and I have been working on parrot illegal trade for decades now. So I'm going to talk to you about the mortality of this trade. Well, first of all, in Mexico, we have 22 species of parrots and macaw. 11 of these are endangered, 7 species are threatened, and 4 species are under special protection. That is, all 22 species are in some category of risk here in Mexico. And we find that 17 to 19 species are regularly traded illegally. And what's important here is that Mexicans, they cannot identify parrot species except for the 2 macaws and the yellow-headed parrot. And this is very important because of the way the illegal trade is done here in Mexico. Now, illegal trade in Mexico is done by bulk, not by species. That is, illegal traders don't seek out specific species. They're going to trap any species they can find. And basically, they're going to buy and sell the species by size, from the very large to the very small. So basically, they just couldn't care less what species it is, because, as I said, Mexicans cannot identify different species. The only species they sort of can identify is the yellow-headed parrot, and traffickers know this, and so what they do is they bleach the feathers of the head yellow, and well, this works fine for green feathers, but for feathers of other colors like red and white or blue or lilac doesn't really work that well, so they have to do it again and again and again and again, and they do this with hydrogen peroxide. And what happens is that they end up burning the skin of the parrot and even the eyes. So again, illegal trade is done by bulk, not by species. Now, here is a graphic that shows the parrot illegal trade chains, and this is important because of what happens next. So we have different people acting in these chains. We have trappers, we have hoarders, we have national and regional distributors, we have consumers are part of the illegal trade chains. They are as guilty as any other trafficker. In fact, they are the main force behind the illegal trade. So for the different illegal chains, we have on the left the red chain, and this is the very simple chain where one trapper will sell the parrots into his community. So there's no middleman. Then we have the local chain where we have a hoarder working with several trappers, and the parrots are going to be sent to a local distributor and to different sellers and then to the consumers. Then we have the international chain where we get parrots from outside Mexico, from Central America, even from South America, and from some of the parrots come from trappers in Mexico. And they don't go to a distributor; they go directly to the border of Mexico with the U.S. Then they are smuggled into the U.S. And then we have the regional or national chain, and that's where we have many hoarders working on both sides of Mexico, on the Pacific side and in the Atlantic side, and they take their parrots to a national or regional distributor, who in turn will sell those parrots to local distributors, and then they will go to sellers and then to the consumers. Okay, so it's very important to understand that there are chains. There's a lot of people involved in some of these chains, and this is important for us to be able to understand the mortality. Okay, so this is the mortality that we estimated for the regional chain of illegal trade, and we ended up with an estimation of a 77% mortality before a parrot is sold to a buyer. And so when you're in the stage of trapping, the mortality is very low, because well, it depends on which method they use to trap the parrots. But in reality, it is very low. The mortality only starts if they keep the parrots for many days before selling them to a hoarder. Hoarding, they take parrots from many trappers, and then you start seeing big mortality, 25% of mortality. Basically, this mortality comes because they really don't feed well the parrots. They don't feed them correctly or regularly, and so parrots start dying, basically of starvation. And then you have the transport. Now, Mexico is a very big country. It's the 14th largest country in the world. So transportation could take several days. And during transportation, parrots are not fed at all. They are crammed into small cages or cardboard boxes, and basically they're not fed, they're not cared for. So there's a huge mortality during this stage. But then we have the distribution and sales stage. And in this stage, around 50% of all the parrots will die. And that's because these parrots are already weakened by having survived for several days, even weeks, before reaching this stage. And many of them are just basically about to die, or they will die before being sold, because once you get a shipment of 100, 200, or 300 parrots, I mean, you're not going to be able to sell them from one day to the next. It's going to take several days or several weeks before they get sold, and so they start to die rapidly. And the thing is that mortality doesn't end when they are sold. The mortality continues after they are sold, and there's around a 90% mortality before a year has passed, and most of it is going to occur in the first 2 or 3 weeks after the parrots are sold. Now, the thing is that even when the authorities are able to seize some of the shipments during the different stages of the illegal trade of parrots, it is very, very, very difficult to keep these parrots alive. They are already very weak, they are sick, they are damaged, they are wounded, and even when they give them the best food, all the medicines they need, the veterinarian services, care all day and all night, you have enormous percentages of mortality. Some of the shipments you will have even 100% mortality, even with all the care in the world. So this is something that people don't understand, because they buy a parrot and it dies, And they think, well, it's my fault. I didn't know how to take care of it. They never think that it's the fault of the traffickers. And so what they do is they go out and buy another parrot. Now for the numbers. In 2007, we did an in-depth investigation on the illegal trade of parrots in Mexico. And we came up that with an estimate that there were between 65,000 and 78,000 parrots being captured and traded illegally each year. This is a very conservative estimate. Some other estimates that were out there at the time, they said that it was around 100,000 parrots a year. So if you have a 77% mortality, that means that with between 50,000 and 60,000 parrots will die before reaching the hands of a customer. And that is that only between 14,000 and 18,000 parrots will eventually be sold to some people. But if you add to that the 90% mortality within 1 year, it means that another 13,000 to 16,000 parrots will die. And in total, it means that from 63,000 to 76,000 parrots are going to die each year. And that's a huge amount of animals dying because of the illegal trade. Now, the problem here is that a lot of people think that when they buy a parrot, they are saving it. And the reality is that when they buy a parrot, the traffickers are just going to use that money to buy more parrots from the trappers, to continue the illegal trade. So consumers are the driving force behind the illegal trade of parrots. If there was no demand, there would not be any illegal trade of parrots. For every parrot that is sold in Mexico, 4 more parrots will die in the illegal trade. And that's something that people need to know, understand, and stop buying parrots. It doesn't matter the reason why you buy a parrot. You should never, ever, ever buy a wild parrot. And so these are some good news. In 2008, we were able to get a complete parrot trade ban in Mexico. And since 2008, we have seen the illegal trade of parrots decrease by 47%. And that means that since 2008, from 31,000 to 37,000 parrots are being saved each year. Right now, the amount of illegal trade is still incredibly high. It's between 34,000 to 41,000 parrots a year, but it's almost half of what it was. So there's a way to achieve this decrease in the illegal parrot trade, because a lot of people think that it is impossible to stop illegal trade of parrots. Well, it is not. You can do it, and we have done it. And one of the ways to do it, first and foremost, is, well, to change the law, ban all trade with parrots. In Mexico, we have banned not only the capture of and sale of parrots, but also captive breeding for commercial purposes is completely banned as well. All exports, all imports are banned. And so that makes it easy for environmental enforcement authorities to know which parrots are illegal and which are not. But that's not enough. You have to tell the people about it. So you have to work on demand reduction campaigns. And so we started these campaigns in 2009, right after the ban, working with the environmental enforcement agencies. And then we started working with a whole bunch of NGOs and universities and institutions and all kinds of people. And since then, we have created over 100 posters and comic books and children's books and coloring books. And we have distributed over 100,000 posters and all these materials all over Mexico. And then during the pandemic, we started working with social media and putting up all these posters in Facebook and in other platforms. And we were able to reach over 18 million people in just 3 years. And this is very important because the more people you can reach with your message, the more people you can start to convince about the problems parrots are facing about not buying parrots. And it works. It has to be done. It takes a long time to do it, but it has to be done. And this is basically the only thing that works. Trying to stop illegal trade by trying to stop traffickers, trappers, it doesn't work. It has never worked. It doesn't work with parrots. It doesn't work with any species of wildlife. Okay, well, that's the information I wanted to show you. Thank you very much.
Now we're going to hear from Kurt, who I've known for many decades, is key leader in Guatemala wildlife conservation and environmental protection. He's had so many different work experiences, and right now he's the wildlife trafficking officer for the Wildlife Conservation Society, and he's having an impact not just locally in Mesoamerica, but around the world. So Kurt, please tell us what's going on out there.
Thank you, LoraKim and the panel. I'm going to briefly explain what the illegal trade of birds have shifted to avoid of what Juan Carlos had been telling us. And this is very concerning because they have managed a way to produce healthy parrots and avoid controls in illegal trafficking around the world. So I will just show you. This is maybe would be the end of my presentation. This is news that everybody of all should know about. That a group of Taiwanese people were caught in the Miami airport with birds hatching in their luggage. Those birds were transported as eggs, and due to a time problem, maybe a flight delay or something like that, those birds started hatching at the Miami airport. So as you all would know, parrots don't need a lot of humidity and heat in the last days of incubation. So traffickers are using these 2 days or 1 day prior to the hatching of the birds to ship them around the world. And they don't just ship them, they take it in their luggage. So this bird passed 2 airport controls, 1 airport control in Managua, Nicaragua, and the 2nd airport control in Miami International Airport. Those eggs were not identified by X-ray, or the X-ray people did not knew how to identify eggs into a luggage. And these birds were a bit lucky because some of those started hatching during the last flight, and they were start making sounds, chirping at the airport in Miami. So the authorities got them, and they got a couple of the traders, but they only got two guys in the airport, and another 3 guys continued their trip. And the Fish and Wildlife Service know that these people were heading to Hong Kong. So 3 people with suitcases completed the trip to Hong Kong. And unfortunately, these 2 guys in Miami just got a very mild sentence of a month in jail and $100 fine for the whole shipment. So this started in 2018. This is when first information was arise, but this is a publication from a local authority in Nicaragua, and they were saying that Taiwanese or mestizo people were being asking for parrot eggs, and they were denouncing this publicly to the community in Nicaragua, asking people not to collaborate with these people that were buying eggs. I don't have here the comments on this publication, but the comments mostly from the community members were that they were paying people to collect the eggs, and they were paying good money. And the only thing that they could do is to ask for more money and let them do their job. And they had the support of government authorities in Nicaragua to do that. Even they have a paper signed for them to collect these eggs. So by collecting the eggs and not paying for chicks, they are just skipping the part of collecting injured or sick birds, and they're avoiding the part of transport of the birds. So they are lowering the mortality rate of these birds and ensuring that they will produce better chicks for the trade. So this is a graphic of part of the investigation that has been done. The upper part is the Nicaragua network. In the center, you can see the primary suspects of the poaching scheme, and all the blue dots are one person that is linked to these Taiwanese people in Nicaragua. So they have a big network of people working with them, collaborating, and they know. And many of them are government people from Nicaragua, even police officers, local community leaders that are supporting this network and supporting the local community members to collect the eggs and just asking them to ask for more money. And the second graphic in the lower part of the slide is the Asia network. It's in Taiwan, Hong Kong, and Singapore, and there are some connections with Paraguay and Guatemala. There's not specified in the graphic, but some of these connections also links to Guatemala and Paraguay. So you can see that the main suspects in the graphic have connections in Asia, and most of these people in Asia belong to Parrot networks. They call them flight parrot networks. It's people that join in parks to fly the parrots or fly the macaws, and they have rings, and they are legal in Taiwan, legal in Singapore. So these birds are being sold legally in Asia. They are being laundered in some part of the trade chain, and they are being sold as captive bred. So how the structure works is they get very good connections with community members. They go to the forest, go to the communities, spend time with people, pay them money, pay for food, pay for lodging, and they get along. This is a real photo of the traffickers and community members, just getting along with the people, and they are collecting a lot of eggs. They're collecting all the eggs that are being produced in the Caribbean coast of Nicaragua, and also bringing some eggs from Honduras to their breeding facilities. And I would say that these breeding facilities are mostly hotel rooms that they pay. They have these portable incubating machines, and they incubate the eggs in hotels. They have not a specific location in the area. This is actual photos of the machines they're using. This is mostly used for poultry. They have a very good system of controlling the eggs. They have identified the eggs. They know when they put the eggs to incubation, and they monitor the timing. They also have ovoscope. I think that's the name in English. In Spanish is ovoscopio. That's the light that they use to see the chicks developing well inside the egg. So they know exactly when these chicks are going to hatch. And this is where the trade bifurcates, because they have two different ways of business. The first one is to produce the chicks in Nicaragua, They are hatching the eggs. You can see very healthy animals in the lower part of the slide. These are birds ready to be sold. They are not being sold in Nicaragua. These birds are being trafficked alive. We still don't know how is the mechanism of these birds arriving to Asia, but we know that these birds are not being traded in Mesoamerica, nor in Nicaragua, Honduras, or Guatemala. These birds are not being found on the market. So there is a gap into the investigation that we don't really know where those birds are going. Well, we know where those birds are going. Those are going to Asia, but we don't know how those birds are going. So the second way that these people is using is just to bring the eggs. They are using portable battery-operated incubators. So they put these incubators into their luggage, and they just take a plane. These are images from the government of Paraguay. They intercepted the same network of Taiwanese people extracting eggs from Paraguay and Brazil, and they were heading to Singapore. This was a flight heading to Singapore. So this is just one of the shipments that was caught in the airport, because the X-ray technician identified something irregular on the suitcase, and they stopped it. When they opened the suitcase, the owner of the suitcase started just breaking all the eggs and killing all the birds. So that was something horrible. So now we know that they are transporting eggs through the United States, through South America. Most of the birds are coming from Nicaragua and Honduras, but there is a network of traffickers linked to the same structure, extracting eggs from Paraguay and exporting all those birds to Asia. This is part of the evidence of the investigation. In the left part of the slide, you can see the birds that are being pushed in Nicaragua and in Paraguay. Then in the center, there's a map where these birds are going. The upper part is the link between government authorities in Nicaragua and the structure of Taiwanese people in Nicaragua. The lower part, the lower image, you have already seen the way they do it. And in the right part is the more concerning part, is that they are selling the birds publicly through WeChat. That's the communication mechanism and the selling mechanism they're using in Asia. And they are selling all different species of birds, not only parrots or macaws. They're also selling toucans from our countries. And this is the end of the parts. This is just one image of the network. These people are part of the illegal trading network of birds, and they just belong to a community organization, a community group that flies their birds in public parks in Taiwan. This also happens in Singapore, and most of the people of these community groups think that the birds they are buying come from a legal breeding operation in Taiwan, but those birds are being laundered from Latin America, mostly Mesoamerica and Paraguay, to Taiwan, and are being sold as legal. So now you know how this structure is working. It's a constant threat. Some people have been done some jail time in Paraguay and in the US, but the main structure is still active. We know that these people have been in Guatemala asking for eggs, and in the southern part of Belize, looking for yellow-headed parrots, also not just yellow-naped, but also yellow-headed parrots. And in Paraguay, they're asking mostly of macaws. So please be just aware of what's happening. And this is my last slide.
Yeah.
Thank you for your attention.
Next up is Bonnie, that is going to connect us to Asia with her work. She started working with the Indonesia Parrot Project in 2003 and started in ecotourism, but went on to oversee so much project work, doing really important efforts there for the parrots in this part of the world during rehabilitation and release. And she also has a video coming up in our break time. So Bonnie, thank you and welcome. Please tell us what's going on there.
All right. I want to talk today about a lot of things. What Juan was just talking about with this new situation, holy crap, blowed my mind. We'd like to talk about the situation, assess the problems, and try to find open minds towards how we can make solutions, because that's very, very important. It's super important. And I'm really proud of everybody to put the summit together because it's really well needed. Okay, next. There is a lot of stuff that's happened in Indonesia. Oh gosh. And obviously I am not the best presenter. There you go. No. Oh. Okay.
This magnificent wild-caught Moluccan
No.
confiscated.
Go down to the bottom left. You see those arrows left and right?
Yep.
Trapping cross.
And all you guys are okay. There we go. Thank you. Sorry. Smuggling has been a big problem in Indonesia. In Asia, which is part of Indonesia, the illegal trade has been on the rise in recent years. Wild-caught parrots are poached from their homes, sometimes using glue traps. If you can see right here, a couple things. First of all, if you look at the bird on the left, the parrot, if you look closely, you're going to see wire traps. There's all kinds of string and plastic there. That bird is actually trapped. I took the picture of the bird and then I realized later that it was trapped, and it wraps around the feet, and of course they go get it. The illegal trapping is mostly in cockatoos because those are really, the ones that they want the most. But you can see here, this is from an undercover, the way they've gone ahead and they've trapped that bird with glue and again, different strings to go ahead and get the bird. And they take that bird. And then basically the birds are been smuggled out of the country, mostly in things that are awful, like the water bottles, suitcases. Most recently, just about a month ago, a group of parrots were smuggled in boxes underneath 3 layers of other things on a boat to the Philippines, and they all died. So unfortunately, as we know, they cannot handle being transported, trapping. Most of them die. It's just really bad. Most of them die in transit. And the one part that just really kind of breaks my heart is it's still going on. Now, on the good news, I'll tell you more about it today. There are some changes, but in the meantime, we just have to keep diligent. It's just unfortunate. Indonesian is a huge place, okay? For those of you who don't know much about it, which most people, it's 17 to 18,000 islands. It's 3,500 miles wide, and only about 6,000 of those islands have been explored. It's the 4th most populated country in the world. However, most of those people live in Jakarta, in the big cities. Once you got it into the villages and the islands, that's very, very low. There are tons of ethnic groups. 1,300 is a lot. Pretty much if you go across the archipelago from one to the other, you're going to see 600 different languages being spoken, different cultures, the people look different. It's dramatic. And because so many of these islands are really remote, that is good and bad. That's where most of the parrots are. However, it's also problematical because it is also where smuggling occurs. I just recently, we've had more people coming in and destroying things, just on a separate side. Global mining, outside countries, including the Philippines, China, Singapore, have gone in and they're doing global mining, and also oil. And that is a big problem because that's destroying habitat. It has huge mineral reserves, and the government, I'm sorry, they won't see this, is corrupt. So they will allow people to come in to take things like that, and also our treasures, the parrots. It's a tough thing, but it's good. Now, the man down on the left, those are the people that we like. They are the ones that are actually working directly in protecting parrots, but they're also live with parrots in a safe way. The trappers are mostly from out of the country at this point. In May 2024, 2,900 and other parrots and animals were confiscated in the Philippines and returned to Indonesia. But it includes more things like crocodile skins, animal parts, bear paws, and a lot of this is now being done through social media. This early bust for 2,500 parrots, that was busted on time, but there's all these cross-border smuggling things, and it's a mess. If they are busted, they are prosecuted. This is a very tiny short video, but I want to show you about what happens when we pick up a bird that was trapped.
This magnificent wild-caught Moluccan cockatoo was confiscated from smugglers in the fall of 2005. During the brutal trapping process, he suffered severe head trauma, lacerations, and blindness. When this video was taken, he was so scared and angry he tried to lash out and fight with every person who approached him. A few days later, this majestic bird died. Project Birdwatch is renewing its dedication to fighting the cruelty of the wild bird trade in the memory of this unfortunate cockatoo. This magnificent...
Now, I have to tell you, I've been working on this for 21 years. With an old video, but it really kind of shows what's really going on. But one of the things I want to do is we're going to talk about the bad things, but I also want to talk about anything is possible if you get creative. And that's one of the things that's super important, because if you can get creative and work directly at the right level with people, you can make a difference. If you see the picture on the right, that's a young woman. These are headhunters, former headhunters, and their bird that they adore above everything else is the Moluccan cockatoo. So this is a success story, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about it. This is a really crazy place. This village is in the middle of nowhere. There are only two villages side by side. The people are also on the verge of extinction because they're headhunters, and even though they no longer kill people, no one wants them. They normally would travel around and move from place to place into the forest, but because no one wants them, they will not allow them to move. So they've been in the same place for 20 years. They're dying out. They don't speak English. They don't speak Indonesian. They have their own language. They have their own culture. And one of the things really involves Moluccan cockatoos. Now, originally, they trapped the Moluccan cockatoo for several reasons. Number one, when the crest goes up and down, it's pink. It's the image of a phallus. So that's a sign of manhood. That's hard to believe, but it's absolutely true. And at that point, they would catch the cockatoo, kill it, and eat it, because that was going to give the men more strength, and they would give it to the young men. They also started using the feathers. So we went and visited this village. It's very remote. You can see down below here, it's pretty scary looking. It looks more like Africa. And we were some of the first people to make contact with these people. We sat down with the chief, and what we did was we talked about what we could do to mitigate their problem. They're starving. The villages, the houses are in the front where the men live. The women live in the back with the children. The women only visit the men for giving them food or, sexual stuff. And the men go out and hunt every day. However, there's nothing to hunt anymore. They eat wild food. They do not eat cultivated food. So they eat snakes or they eat whatever they can find in the forest. The men eat first. If there's anything left, they give it to the women. Otherwise, that's it. And because of this, and because of they're remote, they are dying out. Ultimately, they are going to be as extinct as some of the birds, but it's what it is. There's nothing we can do about it. We have made a communication with them, and we did make some changes, which are really pretty awesome. Best solution is we talked to these people. We said, what do you want? We made a deal that they would no longer kill the cockatoos as long as we gave them the molted feathers. The boys they would kill a bird just in order to basically have that boy in his coming of age. So by agreeing to send him the molted feathers, they stopped trapping. That was pretty fast. And again, I'm just going to skip this and read it real quick. While working with people in person, you can make the change. We have released cockatoos back into the wild. We're doing great. However, the problem is still there, and we have to continue fighting it. I hope that all of you are interested. If you're interested, please join me. Send me an email. I think they've offered you one. And I would be pleased and honored to talk to anybody to see if they'd like to help, because we need it desperately. And that's the end. And I say thank you very much.
I am the last presentation, and I just want to highlight some of what the other people said and tell you a few stories as well. So the harm of the parrot trade on wild populations, this is what we've been talking about today. And just a brief story about Guatemala, where we began work, one of the first parrot projects in the Americas, studying the now critically endangered yellow-naped parrot. And we were one of the first people to document that nearly 100% of our nests were trapped. In these days, it was legal to sell them to most countries in the world, though it was illegal to take them out of Guatemala. But our wild parrot work showed that we had nearly 100% of the nests were taken, unless they were with bees or really dangerous trees. You can look at this graph and see how the bird population has decreased. This is just one area, one tree where they spent the night, where we counted them, and now there are none. So where we had maybe 50,000 yellow-naped parrots there in the 80s, we now have 400 or 500 left in Guatemala. This is not just the story of Guatemala. This is the story the world over. We are losing our parrots. They've moved from being abundant to critically endangered. So the populations are in trouble, and over 50% of them are in some endangered status level, and their populations are decreasing. And these are just the ones that we know about. The macaws have been gone from southern Guatemala for 70, 80 years. And the yellow-naped parrots are almost gone. And then they start working on the parakeets to go next. This trade has been going on a long time, decades and decades, but it goes back. Here's some pictures from South America, where parrots were moved over here from the Atlantic forest over the Andes into the other side of the Andes, where they don't belong, but the remains of the birds were interred there. And the birds showed skeletal problems, nutritional problems, feathers repeatedly pulled, beaks that had been cut. These birds had suffered being in the trade thousands of years ago. And this trade was also in Central America and North America and Mexico, where they had breeding populations. They sacrificed the birds to the gods. And you can see from this pottery piece, the birds have all their feathers pulled out because they kept pulling the feathers out because they were worth nearly as much as jade. There was a huge trade in this. And then we step up the trade when we talk about Europeans having contact with the Americas and many other countries. On Columbus's first trip back from the Caribbean, on his first trip there, he took back enslaved people, and he took back 3 Hispaniolan parrots. So we start getting this very international pressure, and then all of a sudden you see pictures of parrots showing up, not pictures, but paintings of in Europe, because it became the thing to do. And as Juan, Carlos, and Kurt have talked about, the trafficking persists and it gets complicated. This was 250 eggs that were captured in Panama this year, coming out of Nicaragua, as Kurt was saying. And a recent report from the World Wildlife crime report says there are some success stories, but basically we're not stopping trafficking. Our project has gotten a lot of money, not a lot, but some, from trying to stop trafficking, and basically it's not working. And this is why people are emphasizing the demand. And I saw in the chat from Rowan, this is just great, that the demand isn't the only solution. It's multifaceted because we need transformation in so many ways. And I really want to point out this idea of legal and illegal components. A lot of people drop the distinction because the demand is on both sides, and one often covers the other. We have projects in Guyana and Suriname and in Brazil, and we have documented birds illegally moving from Brazil into Guyana and Suriname and back and forth. Guyana and Suriname are the last two countries in the Americas where it's legal to export. The thing is, not only is it legal and it's hurting the populations with acceptable quotas by the international community, they're going illegally all over the world. And this is why when we talk about demand, we don't often talk about whether it's legal or legal components, but people are trying. Here in Suriname, we're working with an indigenous village to choose to be parrot conservationists instead of making some income from trapping, because it's dangerous for them to climb those trees. They want more dependable income. And not only are we helping save the parrots by supporting them, it is livelihoods and income. Our field director there is a woman, and she said, I never had work before, and now I'm leading my community and earning money for my family. So the transformation in parrot conservation happens at so many levels. And I told her about the parrot crisis and how many birds fill up our sanctuaries and how many die. And she said, but some live and some can still fly. And I said, yes. And she said, well, then they should come home. And they should have never left their home. Families should remain intact, human families and parrot families. This is a family of red and green macaws in Paraguay, flying free in the backyard. Look how excited the children are. And so we're trying to put families together across the generations, because the trade disrupts families. And I want to tell you the story of Rosa here, a confiscated in Honduras scarlet macaw. As you can see, she's really young, and the government doesn't really have the resources to take care of them. And so here she is, and her foot looks a little off, right? Something's not quite right there. And here's a picture they sent to me. And you can see her leg here is swollen. It is broken, and there is no veterinarian, no bandage, no splint, nothing to help her. She has to deal with it, no pain medication. And when I examined her when she was almost a year old, not only had this leg been broken, but this leg, this wing, and this wing. How did that happen? Well, in Honduras, they nest in pine trees, and if they're too dangerous to climb or they don't have the equipment, they just cut them or burn them down. And whatever injuries the birds have, they have to deal with their own, and many of them die. So in our rescue groups in Honduras, we see lots of birds with broken wings. Here she is at 9 months of age. She's sad. She's desperately thin. She has pneumonia. She has parasites. Her feathers are in terrible condition. And she did not quit crying all night long. This is just one story. I know I can tell you hundreds of stories like this. So we worked with the indigenous community to bring her back to health. I thought she would die, but they took care of her. Here she is at almost 2 years of age, looking a little sharper. She can flap. She can't really walk. You can see her perched here. She has to pull herself along, cannot fly with the other liberated birds, but she's an ambassador, and she greets them and takes care of them at the rescue center. She only lived to be 4 years of age. It was a hard 4 years. They live to be as old as we do, so she died young. Juan Carlos already talked about the significant loss of death. We see this in our projects too, of birds that enter the trade. And we also see that where there's low parrot welfare and decreasing populations, it's often tied to low well-being of the people. You know, how can you do parrot conservation in the midst of so many challenges and so many of our governments? And this is going to be talked about tomorrow, but I want to bring up that part of the harm that happens to our parrots and our populations happens to our own heart and lose their own lives. Pedro was a friend of mine, and he died trying to protect the yellow-nape parrot nest, which the people took anyway, and those people have not been convicted. They are free. And in our other project in Honduras, our project manager, Santiago Lacuz, this is our project truck. You can see how it's had been impacted by bullets. They tried to kill him and his son. They survived because people want to stop the trade. They want to take the forest. But these people are fierce, and they're putting their lives at risk so that we can all have scarlet macaws, that the Central American scarlet macaw that's critically endangered. They're also working with the great green macaw in the forested area of La Mosquitia, where the drug trade, the illegal land grabbers are fierce there. They kill people there. But this indigenous group is there trying to protect the birds to make the first indigenous parrot sanctuary in the world. And their lives are intermixed with such beauty and violence. This military officer has to accompany the people when they go into the forest. He's with a free-flying bird that was liberated. And look how beauty and violence come together. Birds can choose to be with us, and people can choose to risk their lives. So in this project, this is a graph showing that the fragile success is possible, going from 100% poaching 10 years ago, and we now keep it to about 12, 13%. And I'm not showing you how many nests they're monitoring. This is the blue line, because I believe there's even people here that are scouting us out to know where to send in their buyers to buy their birds. So fragile success is possible, and there's much we can do to improve conservation outcomes. Look at all the different areas a conservation plan has to work on. But as we've already heard, we are having limited success. It's fragile, it's dangerous, and there's so much more we can do. Whereas, as I emphasized in the keynote, we need to change everything, our relation to the birds and to other people, so we take care of them, we reduce the demand, we don't put birds in cages, and we have to change the economics of our world. It's not okay to take resources from one and give it to another. And Juan Carlos talked about what we can do is we can do social media campaigns. This is a group of many organizations, Parrots Sin Fronteras, Parrots Without Borders, doing their effort on social media to reduce the demand. Let us not let these birds go silently into the dark and into their lives. Let us be fierce. Let us not be gentle, and let us stop the trade, stop the demand, and no more birds in cages. And let's be in conjunction and in solidarity with the people around the world.